This is the Bulls Talk podcast presented by Coors Light. I am Jason Goff, and I'm joined by Rob Schaefer, Casey Johnson from NBC Sports Chicago and NBCSportsChicago.com, and of course our digital content producer, my man Tony Gill. Coming up on the show, we'll discuss bubble playoffs. That's right. The NBA bubble is not only here, but the playoffs are here as well. So we'll discuss the matchups and how to affect certain teams, certain players, and we'll also get into Casey Johnson's discussion with Jim Boylen as he exits his job as Bulls head coach. We'll find out how he's doing, what's next, and what was thought of the job he did here in Chicago.
Born in the Rockies, Coors Light is lagered cold for a crisp, clean taste, filtered cold to ensure clarity and brightness, and packaged cold for peak refreshment. Because those who thirst for more deserve the world's most refreshing beer.
Welcome into another Bulls Talk podcast. It is Casey Johnson and Rob Schaefer and our digital content producer, Tony Gill, and I'm Jason Goff. We're going to chop it up about not only the Bulls' goings on, because, of course, we're in the aftermath stages of Jim Boylen's firing, where AK and Mark Eversley go from here, and also we get a chance to talk about the comments that Jim Boylen finally made to our very own Casey Johnson. So we'll get to that part of the discussion. But before we do, fellas, let's talk about what we are about to witness. It is playoff bubble action. The NHL seemingly has pulled it off without a glitch. And it seems a little weird to say, okay, this team now is the home team, even though there is no home or road. Now we get to experience that in basketball. And before we even get into the actual matchups, Rob and Tony, how do you think guys will be affected or not affected? Like, do you think the 8-game sample size is enough to show you exactly how guys will fare as opposed to the regular playoff pressures that we see, whether it be crowds or how crowds affect the refs, what coaches are willing to say to refs now that the sound is a little bit different? Rob, we'll start with you. What do you expect to see maybe different or not so different than we saw in the 8-game restart for each one of these NBA teams?
Yeah, I think the 8 games were certainly valuable to teams in terms of getting used to the environment. I mean, from our perspective, from, a fan, media, analyst, whatever you want to call yourself perspective, I don't see a ton of value in them just because, as entertaining as the basketball was, there were plenty of instances of kind of zombie lineups marching out there, guys getting rest, guys kind of going half speed, not a lot of defense played. And I'm not complaining about it. I think you got to ramp up the way you ramp up, especially in such an unprecedented situation. But I don't take too much away from those games as it bears on the playoffs just yet. I guess if some of the narratives that were established over the seeding phase start to get confirmed as we move through the playoffs, then maybe in retrospect they'll go back and rethink that. But the thing that I'm watching in terms of moving forward in the playoffs, and we were just talking about this off air, and Tony, we've talked about it a couple times, is I'll be interested to see what the quality of basketball continues to be, because there was a lot of talk coming into this experiment that, with such a long layoff, we don't know how guys have been able to stay prepared, what kind of equipment they're working with at home, et cetera. We don't know, is it going to be a sloppy brand of basketball? And it hasn't been that so far. And I'll be interested to see how the fact that this environment is bubbled and there's no travel, I'll be interested to see how that bears on players' fatigue and stamina and things like that. I think taking that wear and tear away could really have people operating at a high efficiency. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out, and maybe even what the conversation going forward is about the length of the seasons that we're playing, because really there's been a talk of shortening the schedule for a long time. And, if we can prove, if there's evidence that there's a higher quality of basketball played when you kind of condense things, because right now we're anywhere between 70 and 74 games played for these teams. Maybe something changes going forward. I don't know. But that's the big thing that I'm watching for.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is health. That seemingly all the people that we want to see in a playoff scenario that obviously weren't out already, the Durants and obviously the Warriors who were awful this year, but all the teams that we knew going into the season that we wanted to see in the playoffs are all relatively healthy. And that's huge for me. And, you can contribute that to, obviously, the shortened season, the long layoff, whatever the case may be. But we are about to see legitimate, hard, tough-nosed basketball complete, like, throughout for the first time in a while, where we're not worried about he's got this nagging injury coming in, I don't know about this, or without question, these guys are probably the healthiest they've been going into a playoff series. And I think that's going to spell like a lot of entertaining basketball for everybody to watch. Just what we've seen, and I do take a little bit from what we saw in those last 8 games, because I was encouraged just by the overall contributions made by a lot of players on their rosters, and not just the stars. Guys are comfortable in this bubble, and that means we know the stars are going to bring it. I mean, they have to. Their team success resides on their backs, but seeing other players on their team step up because of the comfortability of the bubble. The lights aren't as bright. There's not a roaring or booing fan base that's getting into some of their heads. This is straight basketball. All you got to do is go out and do your job and not have to worry about a bunch of other factors. You don't have to worry about tickets. You don't have to worry about any of that other stuff. Go out there and do your job. And I think we're about to see a lot of unprecedented fun basketball.
See, it's funny that you mentioned that at the end there. I'm looking forward. I mean, we won't find out until after this is done, but I'm looking forward to all the things that we think are negatives that maybe are positives that affect these teams, like the outside variables, the things that affect players, the things that affect entire teams. Like, for instance, what happens after a bad game or a bad couple of games, whether it be shooting-wise or by a whole team? Sometimes guys go out and alleviate some steam. You done did everything you can on this campus in these first 2.5 weeks or so. That's why they're allowing people to come back. Well, they're allowing family members to come back in, or people that you've had long-term relationships with. But you're not just going to go fish the pain away. I mean, these are still humans, right, in this bubble. So guys who are used to tying one on or going and hanging out with the boys or doing whatever they do, the atmosphere is now different. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the more experienced players deal with this, as opposed to the guys who are the young teams. Like, for instance, while we're taping right here, the Denver Nuggets are an up-and-coming team that everybody is really, really high on, including myself. But until further notice, I think their kids having fun. I want to see what happens in a series with a team with a bunch of young dudes who are stuck in a bubble. And, yes, it's all about hooping, but we have seen this before, the pure sense of basketball, like you mentioned, right, Tone? But the pure sense of basketball allows you also to go home and chill afterwards, no matter what the tournament format these guys have played in, whether it be AAU, NCAA, whatever the case may be, and now in the NBA playoffs. So these guys are used to a certain level. Yeah, the playoffs ratchet everything up a notch, but it also, like, the families understand it's playoff time. I'm going to be doing this and this and this. I can't do this. Now, with none of that around you and only basketball around you, I wonder who's going to get tight, things. We're going to see some things that we haven't seen. Like, I think Dame missing that three-pointer and those free throws with the whole playoff, Dame time thing that Pat Bev and those boys were chiding them about. I think we're going to see some moments from guys who we expect to always come through, and it just be, hey, maybe this is the bubble, maybe this is the basketball odds, or maybe this is the actual situation where it's so different for them that something clicked. So I'm looking forward to all those things. And also, in the end, I mean, there's so much to consume from a fan standpoint. Like, just imagine having to walk past these dudes on a nightly basis that you are going toe-to-toe with. Or, you got your appointment for whatever masseuse or trainer or barber or whatever the case may be, and you having to be there with a guy that you're going to guard for the next 3 or 4 nights. Like, those are the things I'm looking forward to as well. So, yeah, the basketball, of course, it'll take care of itself, but the outside variables, I feel like, are going to be fascinating, and we may got to find out about them until Taylor Rooks and all these journalists who are down there start to unearth some of this madness, because I think there's a lot more going on at this bubble than we're privy to because of the social justice aspect and all the other things. And the NBA has put out a great message and marketed everything well. But I can't wait to find, because there are dudes legitimately in the NBA on teams with each other that don't like each other. Wait till elbows start flying and these refs are tired of being like. That's the other thing. The refs are tired of being away from their families too. You think I'm gonna listen to James Harden talk crazy to me and we have to walk past each other all the time? Like, this is. I'm telling you, I'm here for all the theater and the great basketball, but it's gonna be madness, boys. Like,
hey.
Think about this too. All you're talking about, Jason, all the dynamics that we've seen play out and the intensity we've seen unfold, that's like 2.5 weeks worth of action. If this goes well and the bubble continues to hold, we're looking at another 2 months of playoff.
Right.
So we've only scratched the surface of the kind of mental health rigors that players are going to have to go through. We've only scratched the surface of the player beefs, the player interactions, going back and forth between games and things like that. Like, if this all goes according to plan, we are kind of just getting started. Then that's a pretty exciing thing. And you're definitely right. I'm looking forward to peeling back the layers of what's really going on down there.
Wait till that family get in there, Rob. Ooh-wee. Because there's one thing about the NBA circles. Everybody knows everybody. And sometimes that everybody knowing everybody ain't comfortable. And there will be people in hotels that are going to make it uncomfortable for other people. So this is going to be an interesting experience. Like this first couple of weeks has been fun. We got ball back. We're talking about it. We're not sitting here watching games from '99, breaking down KG getting dunked on and all this other stuff. Like, we're actually out here talking about it. It's about to get spicy. I'm hoping for the best, right? But this thing is opening up to a different, not just level of competition, but the factors, the variables are getting ready to change here. KC, what do you think will be something that maybe affects players adversely or positively that we haven't seen in the couple of weeks that the restart has happened? Or do you think playoff bubble basketball will be much like we remember playoff basketball being before this pandemic?
I mean, I think it's the great unknown, because we've obviously never witnessed this, and I can't wait to watch it. What I will say is, as we all know, playoff basketball is so fascinating because you have rarely a back-to-back, and you have time to game plan, and the matchups become so much more, crucial. To me, it really draws out coaching because I think the amount of preparation you have and the amount of time you have and the fact you're seeing the same team and personnel and wrinkles and play calls over and over really bring coaching to the highest level of importance. Not that it's not important during the regular season, and I'm also not overstating this to the point where I know it's a players' league at the end of the day and players are win and lose the games, but I do think that coaching really is highlighted during the playoffs, and the fact that there's nothing else going on for these guys and they're in this bubble. I mean, they already live and breathe it anyway at their practice facilities, like in a normal playoff postseason. But the fact that they're just there, a hotel room door away from each other or a meeting room away from each other, it's just going to – can you imagine Tom Thibodeau in this playoff bubble,
what?
Man? I mean,
dudes will be in every conference room, like icing screens, no matter what, like watching film. Think about it, Casey, if Tom Thibodeau can have you at the practice facility for 24 hours, because that's pretty much what this is. Like, You can't tell your coach, I had something else I had to do. I couldn't get to shoot around or, training table on time.
But the other thing is, and we kind of touched on this last time, but as we all know, playoff basketball typically is a little bit more half court oriented. It slows down a little bit. Defense becomes a little bit more paramount, and the dominant jump out for me from bubble ball to this point has just been the lack of defense and the offensive explosions. It's been clearly an offensive oriented game. So I'm curious to see how that dynamic plays out as we progress.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, and live sports. News clips, trending bits, and timeless hits. It's Kim and Courtney, Seth and Jimmy, Hoda, Savannah, Fiona, and Shrek.
I'm an ogre!
It's the best of streaming and the best of TV. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free, upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. These titles plus the English Premier League and Law & Order SVU streaming now. Content availability may vary over time. Some content requires paid upgrade.
All right, let's get into some of these matchups, guys. I guess we can just start off with the one that you are the most intrigued by, and we don't have to call out names because we all got thoughts on this. So the floor is open. The series that you guys are most intrigued by. Anybody take it?
I'll go Thunder Rockets.
Why is that?
Well, I guess it was a little bit more before we knew Russ was going to miss the first game or two. I love the tension, the Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook traded for each other last year. I love that tension. I think that's pretty compelling. I also think they play just a really fun, contrasting – it's two fun, contrasting styles of play. Oklahoma City's very slow it down, mid-range oriented. And Houston obviously, revolutionized like the three-point heavy offense and, spacing the floor, obviously going uber small. The Thunder will play Steven Adams at center. I'll be interested to see how he survives in that series. And it might be the most evenly matched series to me of them all in that 4-5 slot in the West. So, that'd be it to me. A close second being Clippers Mavs, just because I want to see how Luka deals with all the wings that LA is going to be able to throw at him. But definitely OKC Houston for me.
That's the one for me. The Clippers Mavs for me is the most interesting first round series, just because not just the wings that they could throw at Luka, but the kind of defense that Luka, I think, has struggled with when we have seen him struggle is a defense that is forcing him to do what they want him to do. Like Luka usually has control of every game that he's in, but every once in a while he'll pull a pull-up three or a fast break three, or he'll try to do something to get himself going, and it goes well most of the time. But some of the times you can see Luka kind of get into a shell of trying to figure out who he needs to get involved or if he needs to get himself going. And, looking at some of the numbers before we got online today, I didn't realize Luka only shot 31.6% from the three this year. So it's not a question of if he can shoot or not. I think it's a question of shot selection. And playing to the fans, I think, is something that players don't readily admit to. But if there's one player in the league that draws a whole bunch of energy and a whole bunch of joy and gives it right back to the people watching him, is Luka Doncic. I'm looking forward to seeing how, in his very early NBA career, even though he's been a pro, for going on, 5-6 years now, to see how he performs in a stadium with that much pressure with no fans, right? So, the restart is one thing, but now getting down to the grind of a playoff and know who you're guarding and who's going to guard you and which shots are the shots that you need to take. They had, 115 points per 100 possessions, which is an NBA record. They were only at 105 versus the Clippers this year, and they lost all 3 games. So I'm looking forward to seeing that coming of age, like, this is cool, but what's the next level? And I don't think you get a better matchup of that kind of dynamic than you do with Clippers and Mavs.
Luke will just direct that energy at the officials. Have you ever seen his scowl at the officials? It's all world. So he'll take that misplaced energy towards the fans and then direct it towards officials. But I'm glad that, look at this, man. We have 3 different choices, which I love. I'm going Trailblazers, Lakers. Yeah. So I'm just saying, to this point, we're 3 for 3. I'm going Trailblazers, Lakers. Clearly, the Lakers have not played at a very high level in bubble ball.
Who's
3 and 5
in that series, Casey?
Let me take a break from dusting my Damian Lillard bobblehead to make the point I'm about to make, is that the reason why it's intriguing to me, obviously for the reasons we've elucidated about the Trailblazers and getting whole again, and Nurkic playing at such a high level, and Lillard obviously playing amazing, but the best player in that series is LeBron James. And so will he be able to, enact LeBron, playoff LeBron immediately and right that ship? Because they just looked a little funky in bubble ball, quite frankly. And Anthony Davis, say what you want about him and how great he is as a player, still has not proven it at this level. consistently. So that question mark is out. The question mark of Rondo, is he going to be available at some point? How does that change them? Portland has just been such a great story, not only because of the level that Lillard's playing at, but, now Nurkic is obviously dealing with a personal tragedy with his grandmother passing to COVID. So they've been kind of a Hollywood story, and Carmelo Anthony, the resurgence of him. So to me, the storylines and the fact that I think Portland really can challenge the Lakers. I know some people are suspects still on that. I'm not saying they're going to win this series, but I think it's going to be pretty competitive. So that's my favorite first round matchup.
Tony?
You guys took all the good ones, man.
You know what? I was thinking about it today, and when I ask a question with the four of us in here, one person gets the answer, and then the next. So that's why I was like, let's just throw it open and just have anybody pick, and then it went in an order where everybody was going to take it before you, Tony. So go ahead and tell us that NBA TV Nets Raptors series is the one you're looking for.
Well, I mean, I guess if we have to rank. There's a ranking for the playoff matchups. Those three will be, in wherever order you like, 1 through 3. But I think the fourth most interesting one, if I had to pick one, is Miami and the Pacers. Just because I know, they're going to be fighting. Somebody's going to fight. Somebody is going to throw a punch, and it's going to be fun.
Going to go at it.
Yeah. And that's what playoff basketball is, and it's kind of doubled and tripled on that because they're in the same vicinity, in the same area, walking past each other all the time. So, that series has been great all year during the regular season with Jimmy and TJ Warren. TJ has obviously stepped up his offensive game to kind of to be in this conversation legitimately, where before it was kind of what is TJ Warren doing against Jimmy Butler? But that series is going to be a fun matchup. I do expect Miami to win it, though. I think they're just the overall better team right now and better coached. But if we're talking about just flat-out fun for a first-round series, I'm going to be making sure I tune in to every game of that series.
All right, let's get to a team that is not in the playoff bubble nor the regular bubble, our Chicago Bulls. KC, you got a chance to sit down with Jim Boylen, and he had some things to say that you expected. Jim Boylen is a very confident dude. He's a go-get-'em kind of attitude, and that came through. But is there anything that you were enlightened by with your chat with the former Bulls head coach?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's pretty standard exit interview, quite frankly. I just feel like as a beat writer, that's kind of your job, is to give a coach, a departing coach, kind of an opportunity to, have the floor. This is actually, I was counting after I talked to him late last night. This is my 9th coach that I've covered on the way out of town, some in different fashion than others. Obviously, Phil Jackson was not fired. But all 9 I've done an exit interview with, albeit on different terms and in different circumstances. So I just kind of felt like so many people have been speaking for Jim Boylen, and obviously, a lot of people are ripping him and criticizing him and calling his tenure a disaster. So I wanted, and obviously he's going to be confident in what he did and have beliefs in what he did. But I thought, he also wanted the opportunity, obviously, to thank people that gave him the opportunity. But
right.
To me, the big takeaway was he was really genuine about the process of getting to know Arturas and Mark Eversley. Said that they treated him with nothing but respect, which jives with my reporting that they've been trying to empower him as they've gone through this evaluation process. Jim really was confident that he was going to be coming back, but didn't have any bitterness towards them. Said, I understand when a new regime wants to bring in their own guy. It's clear that he loved working for the Bulls. I think anybody, even his biggest critics, would never question his care factor. Pretty emotional guy, very passionate, worked very hard at the job. The one other thing I would say is, I may get killed for this, what have you. I feel like the local perception of him as a laughingstock really doesn't square with kind of the league-wide perception of him. I mean, the guy's been in the league 2 decades. I mean, he's landed a lot of good gigs, on pretty high-profile staffs, been to 6 conference finals. So you can not think his tenure with the Bulls went poorly, but it's not like the guy doesn't know basketball. And I feel like that kind of came through a little bit with his comments in the article as well.
Positives and negatives of the Jim Boylen tenure, if you have any, Rob.
Yeah, I don't know that I have too much more to add necessarily than what Casey laid out there, because I think it's laid out well. And it was a well laid out piece. It was one that I appreciated because I agree. He did deserve, his spot to take the floor and address things kind of as the parting shot before he went. Positives and negatives. I mean, the negatives, we don't want to bury the guy, or at least I don't. The negatives are obviously the win-loss record. There's player development issue. We could go on all day about that. The positives for me was, Casey, you said it was the 9th coach you ever covered on a personal level. It's the first coach I've ever covered. It's my first year on a beat.
Right.
And all I can say about it is I won't forget it. So, and I wish Jim the best to whatever's next. Casey, to all the points you mentioned about the league-wide perception, I personally don't doubt that he'll find himself another gig somewhere, whether it be as an assistant coach or what have you. There's no doubt that the dude knows basketball, and, he'll land on his feet somewhere eventually. But, all I can do is wish him the best.
No doubt about it. And it was a well-done piece, Casey. Enjoyed reading it this morning. Jim now can go hang out with his daughters, figure out what life has for him in store. But he seems like a guy who's gotten the most out of his time. Like in any time that I interacted with Jim, he was like Jim was always more upbeat than the crowd or the room was, which said something to me because everybody knew what the situation was, and it wasn't. They weren't the results that obviously Bulls fans or he or the team would have wanted, but he always kept a decent enough disposition around me or around us. I never saw him out of control. So we'll go from there on to the next coach, whoever that coach is. KC, I know it's only been a few hours since this has happened, but is there any more talk, any new names, anybody else that Bulls fans should be keeping their eye on? Because now the coach watch is going to ramp up to the levels where we're talking about this and the drafts. It's full off-season mode for a lot of these Bulls fans.
Yeah, I don't have any new names. I reported 5. The Athletic, Shams Charania reported David Vanterpool, which I have actually not yet been able to confirm. But I think the big takeaway that I've had just in kind of talking to some people over the weekend since the firing is that it's not going to be just 5, 6 names, what have you. It's going to be a process. And I think the fact that Arturas has mentioned he doesn't really have a timeline for this, suggests that they know, that they want to speak to a wide variety of people. I think it's an opportunity to kind of gain insight on a lot of different basketball minds and also gain insight on some different basketball organizations. And the bigger takeaway, and, I'm not being critical of John Paxson here because I've talked to John about this before, but, John just didn't really have a lot of current relationships in the league. He didn't work at that aspect of, executiveship. That's just wasn't one of his strong suits. He was, more of an old school executive and obviously knew all things Bulls related and knew obviously the Reinsdorfs very well and focused on his own roster. I mean, he had some relationships in the league, but the big takeaway that from getting to know Arturas and Mark to this point, and I don't know Mark very well, but I know Arturas a little bit at this point, is that they obviously have worked for multiple franchises, and they also have been in the relationship building business for a long time. So they are reaching out to people that they already know, but they are going to obviously get to know them on a more intimate level throughout the interview process.
Yep. And the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, we got the lottery coming up. We got all these things, and we got playoff basketball. So we'll be keeping you guys up to date and in tune with all the goings on, not only from our viewpoint with the Bulls, but also with the NBA and the NBA playoffs. So for Rob Schaefer and Casey Johnson, my man Tony Gill, I'm Jason Goff, thanking you for listening to the Bulls Talk Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the Bulls Talk Podcast presented by Coors Light. Find us on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Subscribe if you like the show. Feel free to rate and review us because you know you like the show. New episodes are ready every Tuesday and Friday morning. We will talk to you soon. Be safe and take care of each other.